guns have been confiscated. So, right, go back to the judge like the next day, get the orders signed that say you have to immediately upon presentation of this order, Houston Police Department looking right at you, you have to release these firearms. We are the Arms Attorneys. Today we are addressing a question we got, which is, how do I deregister my gun? So stick with us. We're going to talk about which states have gun registries, how you might remove your gun from your name, and do you even want to? But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And all right, there is kind of two groups of states we have here. First, states that have some kind of firearms registration. This is apart from any federal requirements. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But some states, at the point of sale, when you move into the state, when you buy certain types of firearms, they require that you register that, let the government know, hey, look, I'm one of these gun owners here. And they really fall into three classes.
Can I have permission to Second Amendment, please, sir?
Sure. Please, sir, I'd like some more Second Amendment. But we're going to list off these states. Huge caveats. Each law is extremely detailed, has very specific requirements, has exceptions and different applications, but we're just going to paint with really big brushstrokes here and talk about, hey, which states generally have a firearms registry, including the District of Columbia, not a state, but total registration, let's just call these California, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Oregon. Handguns, so that was all firearms. Handguns only, we're looking at New York, New Jersey for new residents. And then registration of assault weapons, we see Maryland and Connecticut. So
yeah. So I will say total registration sounds like when Richard puts together these lists of sequels to movies.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds like a Richard movie sequel.
Yeah. Total registration.
Total registration.
Total registration 2, the registrationing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
I have so many lists of movies out there, by the way.
Yeah.
But all right.
Comment below if you would like to hear some of Richard's lists of movies. Hypothetical movie sequels names. We're such nerds. No one wants to hear our bullshit. No. All right, continue.
So, all right, we have if you didn't hear your state listed there, California, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Oregon, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Connecticut, not one of those. All right, we're not looking at there being any type of state level registration.
Correct. And so it is because most of the time we get the opposite question, which is, I've just come into possession of a firearm.
How do I register?
How do I register? Which is what made this question so fascinating. How do I deregister? So, number one, if you live in one of these states that does not have a registration requirement, you're not there. There's nothing to work with. But you may be thinking about the federal, not registry, because that's illegal, not a registry, but the federal ATF traces that can be done that might associate a person's name with a firearm.
Yeah, so there's kind of two things going on here. There's kind of a myth, and then there's the what you see on TV. And let's start with the what you see on TV. Well, a lot of times, and maybe this happened to you. You come into contact with law enforcement, they have your firearm, they're typing something into their computer, and then really, what are they querying? A lot of folks think, all right, CSI, they're seeing, is this gun registered to me? Really, that database is a national database of lost and stolen property.
Correct.
And so they're saying, does this gun show up as having been reported as lost or stolen? That way we know, hey, this person, maybe they're the thief, maybe they're in receipt of stolen property. Maybe we want to get this thing back to the real owner. But that's kind of the one database that they think that there's a national registry that's just searchable like that.
Yeah. People say that. They're like, what if I get pulled over by the police and they run my gun and it doesn't come back to my name?
Or it's like, I'm borrowing my husband's gun. Are they going to know it's not, that kind of thing?
It doesn't come back to a name. It doesn't trace back to a name. It's just going to ding up as being lost or stolen, or it's going to ding up as being clear. So that's number one. So,
all right. Second one is the government clearly has a gun registry because... All right, when I bought this gun at point of sale from a federal firearms licensed dealer, FFL, I filled out an application, ATF form 4473. They took down all of my information, which I don't know if you'll notice this, they shortened the form, they restructured it. It used to have your information spread out over multiple pages. Now everything's conveniently on one page. That makes it a little bit easier to... This happened a few years ago. Do you remember that?
No, you know why? I remember when they restructured the form, but I have not bought a gun from an FFL since before they did that.
Yeah, they used to, gun 4473 used to have information spread out over multiple pages. Now it's all conveniently
It's
on
all,
one
yep.
page. That's a little suspicious. We called it out at the time that it happened, but all right, at any rate, that record theoretically lives at the gun store. It's part of their records. And prior to the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, those records could have been destroyed after a period of 20 years. They could have gotten rid of these. Now, since the passage of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, they're keeping these things. Or was that part of a consolidated budget thing?
I believe it was. I believe it was Bipartisan Safer Communities Act.
All right, I may be wrong. Fact check me in the comments. But so we have now, they have imposed this requirement on FFLs that they keep these records forever.
Forever.
Which is all right.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
And when you close up your gun store, what happens?
So they go to the out of business section. They have the out of business records. Those are kept at the ATF HQ, and so we see.
So,
All right, they got to keep these records forever. You also see simultaneously they're running a lot of gun stores out of business by changing what the definition of willful violation of a transfer.
zero tolerance, willful violations.
Yes, then they're centralizing these records at the ATF. So I mean, if you would have asked me,
they're making a list.
yeah, if you would have asked me a decade ago, does the government have a centralized database of firearms? I would have said no, but now it's looking a lot more like yes.
Yes. So, and evidenced by the fact that, yeah, so in fact, I had some clients who were going through this very recently. When you have your firearms seized by the government, they will run an ATF, they'll run an e-trace, and they will come back with a name. And that name is whoever last purchased it from an FFL dealer. If there's not a list, how do they do that? And I know how they say they do it, but
I'll tell you how they say they do it. First, they say, all right, this gun was sold to this gun store. We go visit that gun store.
right, they
We
go to
pull the
manufacturer.
record.
Yeah. What serial number? This serial number? Which gun store did this go to?
Right. That's what they say they do.
Yeah. And then to that gun store. Okay, pull the record and tell me.
But, who's been doing fantastic work on this? Gun Owners of America. They really brought that whole going out of business records department. They've done a fantastic job on that. Shout out to GOA.
Yeah, I love GOA.
But, all right, now, so deregistering. There's nothing to deregister from.
No, there is not. But if there is, it is potentially getting your not buying from FFL dealers, right? I mean, that's your deregistration. I mean, I'll tell you, there is not going to be a mechanism for you to have like my firearms that I did buy from FFL dealers. They got my name on them. That's it. There's nothing I can do about that except sell them. I guess, back to an FFL dealer, in which case someone else would buy that, which I've done before, right?
Right.
So like there's some SIG out there that no longer has my name attached to it because I traded it in when I bought my Ruger.
So,
right? So it's like you could do that and then you could just go buy private sale guns, right?
well, they'll point a sale SIG. They'll see your name, come to you and say, what happened to this gun? And you'll say, I sold it. And then they'll go to that new FFL and pull that new record. So you're still in the circle.
I'm still in the circle.
You're still in the circle of life.
And it rules us all.
Yeah. But so nothing to deregister from. Do you want a gun in your name? There's pros and cons to this, I'll say.
Yeah. So back to my clients who've been dealing with this. So they were unjustly arrested. We go to court. The judge finds no probable cause, and the state reluctantly dismisses the cases at the first court setting, which is great because normally you are ping-ponging around in the system for ages. But I guess justice was done given that they should never have been arrested in the first place. Guns have been confiscated. So, right, go back to the judge like the next day, get the orders signed that say you have to immediately upon presentation of this order, Houston Police Department looking right at you, you have to release these firearms. And then what happened to my guys? They didn't do it. Oh, we have to get it released for major crimes. And they know that as the lawyer, like, I'm not going to haul their asses into court immediately, right? We're going to
They don't know that.
Well, they do. That's why they screw around. They know that like the next day I'm not going to do it. So finally, they are like, all like, I'm calling people, I'm raising hell. And then finally they're like, oh, well, we got the ATF e-trace back and they don't trace back to these guys. We can't release them.
So what?
Exactly. Private sales are legal. So I suppose point for your guns being in your name if you find yourself in this situation, that's one less hurdle for the Houston Police Department.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, proving ownership, which
Right.
there's tons of guns stolen. There's tons of guns that get unlawfully confiscated, like happened in your case. So,
Right. And you know, yeah, okay. One less hurdle. I will say they did release them, but I had to get the HPD's lawyers involved and I had to make a lot of threats about like contempt and sanctions. And it was
well, when you
very
have the police
time-consuming.
saying, "Oh, I got this court order," that doesn't mean anything.
We have the law says we have to do this, and they have like, if you are a police officer who does not know the difference between your internal department policies and the law, you have no business being a police officer.
Woof, hot. All right, so we got our pro there. Cons, well, guess what? The government now has this record, theoretically. I would just assume that it's centralized at this point. Knowing all gun owners, I would say, I think I came up with a very easy way to defeat all of that. If everybody goes buys a gun and everybody's a gun owner, guess what? That database, that don't matter nothing.
Or if we're just constantly engaging in private sales, we're legal in your state. I mean, like if it's like, you know, white elephant, but with pistols, like
Sure.
trace it. Find it.
That is a legitimate security tactic. You see that with like online traffic. They call it white noise, where
Yeah.
it's just random websites
Yes,
so that
you
they can't
cannot
really
purchase
detect
a-
your.
Yeah. You cannot purchase a gun with the intent that you immediately resell it, however.
Yes, that would be engaging in the business.
So don't do that. But yeah, so anyway, but all I'm saying is you can't knock on my door and demand guns that you don't know that I own.
That's true.
And for that reason, I think that I am very happy with my mix between like I do have some guns that come from FFL dealers. Like my car gun, like okay, fine. That can be Emily Taylor because then if HPD confiscates it and I have to get it back, that's one less hurdle for me to bitch and moan about contempt hearings. But I also love all my private sale guns floating around my house that like nobody has no records of.
So
Cash only, no papers.
yeah, maybe get
Maybe get a mix.
Yeah, maybe get a mix. You get some FFLs, you get some private sales, you get maybe some homemade guns.
Oh yeah, now that I will say that is not in my arsenal.
But there's a lot of interesting considerations going on here. Can't pretend like it's black and white and it's all good and all bad. There's some arguments on both sides. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And let us know in the comments. I'm interested to hear, do you want your gun to be in your name? Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.